to answer your question, get a scan. If you've ever had an existing scan, we can read it too.
So point one, let's get an MRI scan. Let's see the boogeyman. Hopefully there's nothing there, but I imagine that there's a good chance that it is. So unfortunately, it's come back now. We've got a lot of visceral fat. What do we do then? What are we attacking? How are we doing it?
Yeah. So the big things, the first and most important thing that you want to do is cut out processed foods. So the best example of that is a very interesting series of scans that we did in this 68-year-old guy who was filled with visceral fat, filled with fat in his muscle. And then in just 2 weeks, Joe, you can see his visceral fat is reduced. And after 35 weeks, it's substantially reduced. And he goes from having a dad bod to having an abdomen like a 20-year-old collegiate athlete. He's got a six-pack, on his MRI. His muscles are free of that fat. His visceral fat is significantly reduced. His shape is and he's 68 years old. And he only did one thing. And this is what I always tell people on podcasts. And for sure, I have my clients doing this, is to cut out processed foods, reduce carbohydrates, especially processed carbohydrates, but cutting out all processed foods. That's the only thing this guy did, was he cut out processed foods. He did not exercise 1 minute. Not 1 minute. So key to getting rid of processed foods is to start eating correctly, or to eliminate visceral fat is to cut out processed foods and start eating correctly. So eating clean, and the best diet I recommend is what I call the living carnivore diet. And what that is eating meat with living probiotic fermented foods. So like fermented kimchi, fermented sauerkraut, fermented yogurt, fermented kefir, fermented kvass, fermented beets. Fermented foods have microbes in them that actually go down and colonize your gastrointestinal tract and help you absorb more nutrients and protect you from toxins. So it's another great big secret that most people don't know about, is the value of eating probiotic fermented foods. And it's in most traditional people, Joe, they have a practice or a tradition of eating fermented foods. And it's a practice, it's a tradition because of the health benefits that are derived from it. So cut out processed foods, eat fermented foods, and then the type of exercise you want to do is not durational exercise. You don't want to jog. You don't want to be a distance runner. So this guy is a distance runner, is a marathoner. He did 10 to 12 marathons a year. He was only 34. He had this big chunk of fat around his heart. And we see this in a lot of distance runners.
Which is a paradox, right?
Yeah, it's you think that you don't have any fat. They're toffies. I mean, the reality is this guy, you don't see any fat on the outside. He's got like nothing. He was like super skinny. That's the way marathoners look like. But he's a toffee. He's fat inside, but thin outside. And here's another example of another runner filled with visceral fat inside. And look how different he looked in 2 months, because we got him to stop running and just jogging, no more running or jogging, and to only sprint. So what you want to do is do what is more primal, what is more ancestral. We didn't go out and jog. We didn't have lifestyles like that. We busted ass in a sprint to save our lives, or to save the lives of our children, or, our fellow Klansmen. So we sprinted, and sprinting eliminates visceral fat in a very short period of time.